Good evening, my name is Paul Hogan. This is the Cork Sports News Show, a new weekly sports show that is going to give a platform to all genres of sport in Cork. And what a lineup we've got tonight to start the show. I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to have the first citizen, Lord Mayor Councillor Joe Kavanagh in studio. Thanks very much for coming in to speak to us, Lord Mayor. It's a real big deal for us, a new programme. Hopefully the Cork sporting public will take it on board and we'll get a lot of support in the coming weeks and months. But I suppose I'll start off, Lord Mayor, by just asking you about what we've had to endure in the last 12 to 18 months with COVID-19. It's affected a lot of people's lives on a personal level, businesses, and I think we've seen communities and different people rally around, and you in the role that you've held for the last 12 months have surely seen some fantastic stories and great tales that have come within the communities.
Yes, Paul, and first and foremost, may I congratulate you and your team for this fantastic initiative. I mean, Cork nationally is the home of sport, and to showcase sport on the Cork Sports News Show is a real super idea, and I'm really delighted to be part of, and particularly the first show. I'm in fantastic company. I just met Jimmy Barry Murphy and Dave Barry outside, two sporting legends. Privileged always to meet somebody like that. You refer to the last 15 to 18 months. It has been a very difficult time for everybody right across the city, right across the country, but particularly across Cork City. And, you know, everybody's had to try to reinvent themselves and try to reimagine the way they live their lives. Whether it's working, whether living or socialising, what was left of your social life. And also, of course, you know, what we're here to speak about tonight from a sporting perspective. Many sports clubs have had to completely and utterly reinvent the way they conduct their business. Many sports, as you know, have come to a complete standstill over the last 6 to 12 months. And I have to pay tribute to the sporting organisations across Cork who have gone an awful long way, stepped out of their comfort zone and played a real active part in our local communities. Only 2 weeks ago, I made an award to a GAA club, a local GAA club in my area, actually, Mayfield GAA Club. It was a community and voluntary award, and they stepped out of their comfort zone, delivering prescriptions to people, delivering food parcels, collecting groceries for elderly people and so on. And there's many sporting organisations across the city played a real active part in enabling our community to get through these difficult times. As Lord Mayor, it's been a completely different role. I have had to do things, probably be known as the COVID Lord Mayor, I suppose, but I've had to really reinvent myself, reinvent the role of Lord Mayor. But the most important thing, as first citizen, as Lord Mayor, and as a politician, I suppose, to an extent, but more so, it is so important to retain the connections, and the three very important words, keeping in touch. And it's so important that you keep in touch with people in a safe way. Really, it's so important. So, you know, hopefully we're coming out of it. We're all being vaccinated, and we're not all safe until everybody's vaccinated, of course. But it's great to see the doors opening in our business community who have suffered incredibly across our city. It's also fantastic to see sporting organisations. In the last 2 weeks, I've been invited to attend the start-up of quite a number of sporting organisations, academy nights and so on. I was up in the Glen the other night. I've been up to Brian Dillon's, I've been up to Mayfield, I've been into various organisations, Mayfield United and so on, and the return to training and so on. And you can see the joy, not only in the children's faces, but on the parents' faces. And it's wonderful to see. So we're getting our lives back slowly but surely. We still need to be careful so that we don't slip back into where we were. But the most important thing is that we get through this together. And sports is a universal language. Doesn't matter what sport it is. It's a universal language that speaks for us all. And it brings us all together. And the sporting community in Cork is a wonderful community, and this particular initiative, the Cork Sports News Show, in fairness, will play a huge part in actually showcasing our sporting community, and I wish you every success moving forward.
Thanks, Lord Mayor.
Thank you for that.
Just to keep the sport in context with Lord Mayor, we all have affinity with sport. A lot of us have played it. We're still involved in it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
If I could just bring you back to your own career, Lord Mayor, in terms of when you started to get involved in sport, and what particular sport would have been a preference for you as you got older, and even to today, what sport would you tune in terms of watching, or what sport would you be looking forward to going back and seeing actually live?
Well, I would encourage everybody, first of all, to participate to some extent. Many, regardless of your levels of talent and so on. But I started off myself. I grew up outside the gates of Rushbrook Tennis Club in Cove. So it was my playground growing up. So obviously a tennis racket fell into my hand from a very young age. And I ended up as a full-time tennis coach up to my mid-20s, late 20s. And I played at a fairly high level. I played in interprovincial and so on. I certainly wasn't the best in my age category, but I really enjoyed it. It was a fantastic sport. I played soccer socially. And I mean socially, we had some crack. We had great fun with Cove Town in Cove, and I played with a couple of other clubs around the place. But once again, I wasn't excelling at anything really, but I loved the participation of any sport, etc. Today, given the fact that I had an injury, I was forced to stop playing sport on a full-time basis. I did damage to my back. I had a back operation in my 30s, so I had to stop. So I'm playing golf. Now, when I say playing golf, by the way, I walk around a golf course with a set of golf clubs, and I create incredible levels of employment for the greenkeeping fraternity.
Like a lot of us.
You'd find me on a golf course, and if you're on a golf course with me, the safest place to be is on the fairway. And
just there was someone whispered in my ear during the week, Lord Mayor, I don't know, you can tell me if they're wrong or not, but the Lady Mayoress, a former Irish soccer international.
Her sister.
Her sister.
Okay. So her sister, Caroline Nagel was her maiden name, and she played centre half with College Corinthians, and she was captain of the Ladies Republic of Ireland ladies team. I often went to watch her play. Very talented. In fact, her daughter Abby O'Mahony is now playing on the Cork ladies football team. So it's obviously a chip off the old block. But my wife Stephanie played with Cork Celtic when the ladies soccer team, so they are a sporting family, and so we're all very proud of Abby and all our family members, and of course Caroline and everything else that goes with it.
And just in terms of the engagements without COVID that you would have had, Lord Mayor, in terms of sport, you probably would have visited most of the clubs in Cork City and County throughout the year, but obviously that was all restricted. But is there some moments that stand out for you in some of the clubs or some of the individuals that you have met over this particular time, that when your tenure ends next week, that you can look back at and say that was a special moment?
Well, from a sporting perspective, anytime I'm very passionate about sport, passionate about people, passionate about community, but sport brings communities together. And as Lord Mayor, I suppose, there's nothing really that stands out. Anytime, as I said to you last week, I was up in the Glen Rovers Club. I've been up to Brian Dillon's. I've been up to Mayfield GAA Club. I've been to Mayfield United Soccer Club and so on, and various other clubs around the city from time to time. And I have to really admire the level of volunteerism in sport in Cork City. When I visit these clubs, the people who give their time so kindly, and training the kids and taking them to matches, looking after them, minding them. They might fall and hurt themselves. I'll pick them up, dust them off and get them going again, sort of thing, and put up with people like me calling, sort of thing. But the level of volunteerism in sport is a critical factor, and it's a critical factor in the potential success of sport. And funding is a huge issue in sport. And I have a personal gripe with anybody in government, really. It doesn't matter who they are, because I strongly believe that we don't fund sport enough in this country. And I think the various we've so many sporting organisations in this country, Paul, and the funding, it tends to be so diverse that we don't get the true impact. And when it comes to international level, and we see it now in things like athletics, when it comes to the Olympics, we'll see small little countries winning gold medals, but yet we'll send boxers out to Olympics, and we'll nearly always come back with some sort of a medal, with little or no funding. Can you imagine the levels of success that we could achieve if we funded our sporting young people properly? And boxing is a case in point. It really is. Now, I never did boxing or anything like that, but by the same token, I have nothing but admiration for the people who actually get behind boxing and take young people off the street and teach them the discipline of boxing and the skills of boxing. And these young people, I mean, I've engaged with young people across the board really over the years in the boxing fraternity in my role as Lord Mayor and Deputy Lord Mayor. And when I see the enthusiasm of young people winning an award and the recognition of a young, they feel 10 feet tall. And if you can do that to a young person, you're putting them on the right track, you're giving them inspiration and self-confidence. And you're putting a hand on their shoulder and you make them believe in themselves. And I think it's fantastic.
And just the community, your own constituency there, Lord Mayor, who spoke about some of the clubs, Mayfield, Brian Dillon's, there's fantastic people up there, superbly run clubs. The facilities over the last number of years have seen a dramatic improvement in terms of fundraising by themselves, but government initiatives as well. It's a great area to be in for sport for any young person or adult growing up. There's so many options.
There are so many options, Paul, and you are right. Like, I mean, the clubs are fantastic and they're very innovative. I mean, last weekend Mayfield J Club ran a move-a-thon and they raised thousands. The community milled in behind them and raised thousands. And in a couple of weeks' time, Brian Dillon's are running a stroll-a-thon. I don't know what, we're running out of tons now to run to raise money, but by the same token, when you see the clubs fundraising like that and, you know, putting their hand up, reaching out to community, and the communities right across the city are responding magnificently, and the people of Cork are never found wanting when it comes to supporting their local community sports clubs. And I'd like to take this opportunity to give a good shout out to government. I don't care who's in government. I know my own party are in government. But I think it's of critical importance that we need to be looking seriously at significant funding, particularly at underage level, for young people, because it's so important. You get young people on a sports field. It doesn't matter what kind of a sports field it is, whether it's athletics, whether it is soccer, whether it is hurling, whether it is football. You're giving that young people a little bit of self-belief. And things like mental health, things like problems they might have, lack of confidence in their own ability. All these things will take a back seat and their sporting focus will take the front seat and put all their problems in the rear view mirror. And that's what we want. And sport can do that for you.
Great. And finally, Lord Mayor, just an issue that has come to the fore there in the last couple of weeks. I think you've set the ball rolling with it. A sports museum in the city. I think we spoke about in terms of the memorabilia that we'd have and all the real stuff that people would be able to display. It's an exciting venture, isn't it? And hopefully it gets over the line.
Thank you, Paul, for raising that, because it's something I'm extremely passionate about. It's something I raised inside in Cork City Council, and I put in a proposal and it's in the mix at the moment inside in City Hall, and I'm proposing that we put in place a facility in the centre of our city, a Cork Sports Museum. And, anybody I've spoken to about have scratched their head and said, what a fantastic idea. And because you could fill it 100 times over. And I'm not talking about any specific sport. We have got such a rich history in sport, right across every code, going back generations. You've got road bowling, and it's not just one sport. We'd be the first county in Ireland to do it. Cork is a county of firsts, and this could be a real first for Cork. And I think this is something, at the moment, where it's at, is that Cork City Council have sent out a tender looking for somebody to come in and do a feasibility study, and that's where it's sitting at the moment. But I'm like a dog with a bone on this one, because I'm not going to let it go, because it's too good an opportunity, and we've got such a rich history in our sporting past. If we showcase that properly, what a future we could have, because you're giving the young people something to aspire to. There's too much stuff in attics around Cork. Let's put them in a museum, and I know we've the Roy Keanes, we've the Sonia Sullivans, we have the two legends I met outside, Jimmy Barry Murphy and Dave Barry. And I could talk all night about what we could put into a sports museum. That's how passionately I feel about it. So I'm hoping that you, through your Cork Sports News Show and all the various sporting people you talk to, you might hop the idea off them and ask them what do they think. Because the more people that shout from the rooftops, not just me, about this proposal, I hope we see the day in the not too distant future when we're walking across the road in the Mall here and there's a beautiful building with a state-of-the-art, nationally funded Cork Sports Museum, and it'll be a major tourist attraction. And we have plenty to showcase and be proud of here in Cork.
On that note, thanks for joining us on the Cork Sports News Show, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome along to Cork Sports News. I'm delighted to say I'm joined here in studio by Jimmy Barry Murphy. Jimmy, when we look back at the last year, it's been a surreal year for everyone in life in general, but sport has played a huge part, I suppose, in lifting our spirits during the course of the last 12 months.
Yeah, we've been lucky to have sport at all and even have live games on television, hurling, football, soccer, racing. All these things have provided a great outlet for us in really tough times for people. And I suppose it's no harm on occasions. Remember all the great friends and people we've lost and people who have suffered through the pandemic. So sport might seem a very small part in the overall context, but it's a huge part of our lives, and it gives people a great outlet and something to watch and pass away some hours.
From your own perspective, if you relate it back to your playing days, managerial days, how do you think you would have found playing, in empty stadiums? We got a lot of surreal results. Maybe the home advantage was negated.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the case. I mean, I can't honestly even visualise what it's like to be a manager or a player in the championship, in the heat of battle in the championship without a crowd there, because obviously I've never experienced that. It's the only experience I would have is playing friendly games or challenge games pretty much behind closed doors over the last period of my management with Cork. So it must be a surreal experience for the players and everyone associated, and to try and get used to that atmosphere then and perform to the highest level. But I think I'd have to say that over the 12 months, the games we've seen have been fantastic, given the difficulties for the players in performing in those surroundings, and credit to the players and management for providing that.
And maybe in the last while, hurling has come under a lot of scrutiny. A few weeks ago, there was a headline in the Examiner, the obituary of hurling. But in recent weeks, we've seen some fantastic high-scoring games. We look at the league game last week in Salt Hill, Galway and Waterford, goals flying in at all angles. And Cork themselves have been averaging 4 goals a game.
It's very early in the year, and it always amuses me when people start raising these debates about the state of hurling and all this type of thing. Like it comes and goes in cycles, all these things. I would say for the teams involved, I'm only guessing as I'm only an observer on the outside now, that the situation for teams is a bit surreal in that you're playing these league games. We haven't even got informed yet whether there'll be a league final or not, because they're waiting to see how it pans out, I think, and all that, aren't they? So it's a bit unreal for the players. It must be difficult for them to perform. But the scoring in these matches has been extraordinary. I mean, you alluded there to Waterford and Galway last Sunday in Salt Hill. I was watching it, and some of the score getting and taking was phenomenal. But there seems to be a very, very lack of focus on defending, which it fascinates me in a way. But I don't think it's any less entertaining for that. And I think all these prophets of doom about the state of hurling, that'll pass too, and every team will develop their own style. And while some people tend to go into following what the other team are doing, there's always seems to be a tendency towards that. I think as the championship comes on, that teams will revert back to what suits them and what their strengths are.
And Limerick, have been setting the bar in recent years, racking up huge points tallies. Some people have crabbed the fact that they don't score goals. They think as the championship develops this summer, that's something they'd be looking to add to their bow.
I'd imagine most teams will. On the other hand, I mean, we went through a campaign in '99 and won All-Ireland and scored 1 goal throughout the campaign. So I think if you're a manager or a player, who gives a damn how you win matches once you get there? And it certainly never worried me when we weren't getting goals. I think that these things tend to come in cycles, and if you're a really good team and you need a goal, then you go looking for it and you might get it when you want it most. But it would never worry me, and it wouldn't worry me now. But as you said, Limerick, massive team obviously, and favourites for the All-Ireland, I think justifiably so at the moment, followed by Galway and then Cork and a few more coming up along behind them. But nothing is cast in stone yet, and I think there's an awful lot of hurling to be played before the summer is out.
As we launch our Cork Sports Show, Cork, I suppose, is a city and a county which is known for its sporting prowess, and very often sports, the sporting public, follow a number of sports. You could be at a rugby game on a Saturday and you could see the same guys at a Turner's Cross on a Friday, possibly in Páirc Uí Chaoimh on a Sunday. And that's always been, a feature of the Cork sporting public, that they're great to get behind teams across all codes.
Yeah, that's true, Joe. It's a very good point. And I mean, I suppose I can speak as somebody who's following all sports all my life, and every weekend pretty much when I was free I'd be always in Turner's Cross supporting Cork City long before my son Brian got involved with them, even and after it. And even still, if if fine weather, if it was fine tomorrow night, and there was access to go to the game in Turner's Cross, I'd be the first one out there. I always had a great love for League of Ireland soccer and great follower of all Cork teams. So we do miss that, and you'd see, as you say, you'd see all the same faces at the different sporting events, and that's something we definitely miss. And hopefully know that as the vaccination programme is being extended and rolled out, that we can all get back to attending our favourite sporting fixtures.
As we know, Cork's a number of great sporting venues. We've seen the development of Páirc Uí Chaoimh, fantastic stadium now. Turner's Cross, a great compact venue. Greyhound racing, a sport that's very close to your heart. A couple of years back, it looked as if the iconic race on the Cork Greyhound racing calendar, the Laurels, was coming under threat with lack of sponsorship, and you got involved with Tony Winters, and to that extent, you've saved the race, and the ultimate classic in Cork Greyhound racing is still going to be to the forefront of the Greyhound calendar.
Yeah, great. I mean, as you know, it's a passion of mine all my life, and when we were being threatened with lack of sponsors there 2 years ago, a group of us got together and we managed to raise a substantial amount of money, over 110,000 in the space of 3 weeks, I think, which showed that there's a great groundswell of support for the game, and there's massive steps being put in place over the last couple of years for greyhound welfare, safety of greyhounds, better treatment of greyhounds and all that. Very, very important part of our industry now. That's all in place now, and we're really looking forward to a very, very healthy sport and welcoming big crowds back to Corrine Park for this year's Laurels starting in September.
And I gather you secured the future of the Laurels until 2023.
Yeah, we had some surplus funds, and the Greyhound Board have very generously decided to support that, and we've got the 5th year sponsor now as well, which sees us out to 2023, so that's a great boost as well.
Speaking of the Greyhound Board, you yourself were recently inducted into the Hall of Fame in greyhound racing, so obviously that was a very proud moment as well, given it's a sport that holds a special place in your heart. Yeah,
I was very honoured to receive it, Joe, on behalf of all my friends and family, and as I said, we're all our life in the game, and hopefully that it'll continue for many, many more years.
Jimmy, when we speak about the last year of sport, we started by discussing crowds and the absence of crowds. I know you're a passionate football fan as well, and cross-channel, it's been a strange, kind of a surreal year. Liverpool, who had kind of arrived on the scene as the new dominant force, the season gone by has been a poor season from their perspective, and they've been one club who've been pointing to the absence of fans as being their Achilles heel through the course of the season. Obviously, they've had well-documented injuries as well, but Anfield, a passionate crowd. They did get a few supporters at their last game. They eventually made it into the Champions League. But do you think that was a very valid, reasoning from them, or was there a bigger picture there?
I think it's an interesting question in the sense that when I was playing myself or managing, I always felt that home advantage was a massive advantage to us, and especially playing in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, we had a great record with Cork teams there over the years. And also even going back to my younger days following teams like Cork Celtic and Cork Hibs, when teams came to Turner's Cross or to Floor Lodge, there was always this inherent kind of belief that when they're coming down to Cork now, they'll find it hard to beat us. And talking to Dave Barry there earlier over the great days in Turner's Cross and all that, I think it is an intimidating venue, and I think the passion of the home supporters has to be a huge factor in all these situations. And it's only when I look at the more recent sports games now across all codes, when you see the return of a certain number of fans, even what difference it makes to the whole atmosphere of the game. And it's not the same. It's a shame that we had to go through this, but that's life. And hopefully we're coming out the other side. And I can't wait to see big crowds back at all our favourite sports venues.
As you mentioned, Turner's Cross, one of the pilot venues for the return of fans. That Cork Limerick game on the 3rd of July in the Munster Hurling Championship. I know the Irish Derby is going to have spectators as well. What particular sporting events are you looking forward to returning to seeing from your own perspective?
Well, I suppose all the local hurling and football games, and Turner's Cross be my favourite venues. I suppose this year I missed out my annual trip to Cheltenham because of restrictions. Obviously nobody was able to travel and no one at all allowed in, and I'm hoping by next March, please God, we'll all still be around and able to travel. It's an annual week's holidays for me, and something I very much treasure and look forward to. And I suppose when I was at home watching television this year, it was only then I realised how much I really enjoy going there and enjoy the spectacle of it more than anything else. It's something like that you certainly miss. And
Cheltenham this year, of course, a remarkable year, dominated of course by Rachel Blackmore, Henry de Bromhead. What a festival from their perspective. And Rachel Blackmore, her star continues to rise in national hunt racing. She's a great ambassador for the sport.
She's an extraordinary ambassador, really, and her success in Cheltenham was beyond belief, really. I mean, she has really brought the level of female sport and participation in racing certainly to an extraordinary level that it must be a massive boost to any young girl starting out in racing that they can compete on an equal level. And there were a couple of other highlights, even like for example Jim Bolger, who's a great friend of mine. at 79 years of age, still training classic winners. Max Sweeney recently won the Guineas at the Cllr, an event that had eluded him, and I was thrilled for Jim, especially that he was able to manage that this year.
And, when you mention National Hunt Racing, there is a sense maybe that it's lacked that sense of competition. The English horses this year maybe suffering a little bit given the prowess of Henry de Bromhead and Willie Mullins, the all-conquering Willie Mullins. Do you think for Cheltenham to continue to be a healthy festival that we need more competition, that English rivalry, it's become a little one-sided?
I think, again, as I said about other sports earlier on, these things tend to go in cycles. It's not so long ago when Ireland could hardly have a winner in Cheltenham. And I think that the massive buying power of the big stables here, Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Henry de Bromhead, all these stables have massive buying power now, and they're great trainers, and the people who are buying the horses want to have horses with them. But I think it's certainly that England will come back. It's a huge population over there. They will rebound as well, and you'll see a big change over the next couple of years, I think, as well in that respect.
And I suppose we started by talking about hurling. On the club scene last year, Blackrock, great rivals of the Bars for many years. There was a sense there for a few years in McKilly dominant, and some people, questioned the whole thing of the divisional teams. But Blackrock winning a great county championship last year. I think the county championship really kind of was a huge catalyst for what was to follow in the inter-county front afterwards. Yeah,
it was marvellous for Blackrock to win it, in fairness to them, and a great final, in fairness, on the day. And great that we had it live on TV as well. Great, and they've been threatening for a couple of years. They've had a lot of underage success, and as you said, they broke in McKilly's dominance. They didn't break it, but they had a great year, in fairness to them. And I think that McKelly, great success for the last couple of these things, as I said, they don't always last, and I think it augurs well for a very, very competitive championship again this year, both in football and hurling. Yeah, and signs that hurling in the city is getting stronger again. There was that little period, maybe a little barren period, but now, Glen Rovers, I suppose, their breakthrough again maybe has kind of inspired Blackrock, and the Bars doing great work at underage level as well. Yeah, very much so, and I think the Bars won a football county 2 years ago, great achievement, but for the lads, we were all delighted. And again, we won the minor county in Cork last year, under 21 county year before. So we're hoping that the Bars will come back to be at that level again. I suppose we started by talking about the whole ethos of Cork people loving sport, across the spectrum. You mentioned Dave Barry, who we're going to have on the show a little later on. Yourself, you played with Cork Celtic and a dual star in Cork. And we look at guys like Tomás O'Leary, who captained Cork Minors to an All-Ireland hurling title and then went on to have remarkable success with Munster. And Darren Sweetenham, who played under you with Cork Hurlers, going on to have great success as well in international rugby. Yeah, there's a great spread across all sports. Even Simon Zebo as well was a great underage player at Blackrock. Saw a lad played with Ireland the other night, Chidozie O'Benny. Played with Nemo Rangers, I think, played in the county final with them against Valley Rovers. He's now starting in England with Rotherham and playing on the Irish international team. So I think an awful lot of young people in Cork, across rugby, hurling, football, all play various sports, and then eventually gravitate towards what they're probably best at. As you mentioned, Darren Sweetenham, he was a huge loss to us back in 2012, 2013. He looked a massive prospect for us, and we were devastated to lose him, but at the end of the day we wish Darren the best of luck, and he has had a fantastic career up to now, and he hopefully will do so as well. And finally, Jimmy, the Euros starting. I know you love your football. Unfortunately, Ireland not there, but it looks like we might have turned a little bit of a corner, the national team. But England, probably their best opportunity in recent years of winning a major tournament. Do you think they can do it? I think expectation probably will burden them now and again when the media get on their backs if they don't have one good performance. I think it's very hard to see beyond France or Belgium. I think they're two fantastic sides, and I can't wait for it to start next week. Okay, listen, Jimmy, thanks so much for coming in this evening and sharing your thoughts, and enjoy the rest of the sporting summer. Hopefully you get to see some live sports soon. Thanks, Joe.
Good evening and welcome to part 3 of the Cork Sports News Show. I'm absolutely delighted to say we're joined by a man whose CV in 2 different codes, football soccer with Cork City, and football GAA with the Cork football team, spanned 20 years, maybe even a bit more than that. Dave Barry's in studio, absolutely delighted, and thanks for coming in to speak to us, Dave. If I can start off, Dave, just with the situation that we've had in the last 12 to 18 months with COVID, how it's affected your life, Dave, personally, and just in terms of business as well, and just, I suppose, your own interest in sport and your take on sport, and how it's halted that and stalled it, and how eventually, as we're coming out of it, that you're looking to just go back and watch a game again, I suppose, Dave. Yeah,
but it's I suppose for me, when it all started, nobody would have envisaged that it would go on for nearly 2 years. You know, where it came from, it started in China, and we said it'll never get to us. You know, one of these things that it'll probably come across the world, but it'll never reach our little island. You know, but it has had a massive impact on everybody, and when you see the amount of people who lost their lives with it. But I must say, when you're talking about the COVID, I think I think people criticise a lot of people, but I think probably 90% of the public have been tremendous. You know, from the elderly who've locked themselves into their homes and hadn't seen their families, but as well as that, the young people, which I've kids in their 20s, and I think all their friends and how they reacted to this pandemic has been a credit to everyone. I know we had a rare kind of few fallouts on the TV, but that'll happen. You know, when you think of the global aspect of this and how big this pandemic was around the world. But I must say, it's a credit to everybody, and it looks like now, give us another probably couple of months, 3 or 4 months, we'll be out of this hopefully, and we won't see anything like this in our life again, hopefully.
And just your sporting career, Dave, it's an illustrious one in 2 different codes. If we focus on the football side of it, first of all, with Cork footballers, some of the highlights, Dave, and just some of the standout moments for you.
Well, you had a great sports personality that I looked up to, Jimmy Barry Murphy. I was lucky enough to play with Jimmy with the Bars. Went on to win a lot of trophies in my career with Jimmy, and my first call up was with the Cork seniors. I didn't even make the under-21 panel. I was only 18, and I was coming out of youth football and minor football with Cork, and I was drafted into the Cork team, the Cork side, for the championship. I hadn't even played in the league game, and my first game with Cork was a championship against Limerick, and I made the Munster final. And I was in one corner and Jimmy was in the other, and we came up against a tremendous Kerry team at that time, and I was looking across to Jimmy and says, "Is the ball ever coming up to us?" Because when we played with the Bars, we were on the ball all the time. But it's a different level, and people have to realise that, even with the Cork senior footballers and hurlers, it's a different level when you get to that. And there's extremely good players out there, competing against you.
And just with Cork City, then Dave, goals against Bayern Munich, you've probably spoken about it an awful lot of times. Goal against Galatasaray, like 2 of the biggest clubs in the world, you found the back of the net against. Yeah. But just going back to that time, Dave, it's a different time to what we have now in terms of diet, psychologists and all at a completely different level. Like I heard Roy Keane saying there today that 3 days before the cup final, he was talking, he had a doner kebab and stuff like that wouldn't be tolerated in today's game. Like how was it for you, Dave, back then? Was it just you turn up, you do your bit of training and go into a game, or was there...
Well, you see, people kind of say that we do a bit of training, but under Billy Morgan there was no bit of training. Billy was ahead of his time at the going back to that. No, we enjoyed a point. There's no doubt about that. We enjoyed ourselves. Like, at the end of the day, we're amateurs, playing in a very serious competitive level. But at the time it was we had a bonding session every week, really, with all the players. We used to go into town, and after games we used to have a couple of pints and talk about the games. But I thought that brought us closer together, and I feel sorry for young fellas now that with the social media, they go for a drink, and if there's a ban for 6 or 7 months, that they're on social media, and there's a problem about it, it's in the papers, and I think this put massive pressure. Like, there's enough pressure on young fellas when they go into a place into county, that without somebody in the corner taking a picture, you're having a pint. Like, it would if you were telling us years ago that this would happen, we'd kind of laugh at you. But you have to see, like, we went up and played in All-Ireland finals, big competitive games, and Billy Morgan said, go out and have a pint or two, relax. Because I'm telling you, people who haven't been there the night before in All-Ireland, it's extremely hard to settle down, get the nerves, and I think you're more nervous before games than during games, and when the game starts, you're there for Cork, and the game is on, and I think at that level, I think, especially with the players I played with, that I won things with, and as I was talking about Jimmy, when the game turns on, that's it, you turn on, and you want to perform. But I think before it, the lead up to games, that's where the nerves, you're by yourself, you're probably trying to sleep and things like that, and a couple of points, we were up in the Burlington, we come in at a reasonable hour and go to bed, and then we're ready to go. But going back to the fitness side of things, I couldn't have trained any harder than I trained. No, diet wise, and probably having a couple of pints, these days, people are looking at the professional level, and you couldn't do that. You know, if you look at the Arsenal players with the Tony Adams, the Mursons and that, they all used to go out, but they used to perform. So, you know, there's a big thing, but I think if you want the longevity of your career as well, you can expand that into, like, players are playing well into their 30s. The only fellas who did that in my time was Denny Allen, and when he came back, when he was told he was too old at 32, 33, he came back at 37 to actually captain Cork. But that's, like, Denny was a one-off back then, and you know, I think you know, they were great days. You know, I wouldn't change it for the world, but I must say I have a bit of sympathy for the players now.
And just your time with Cork City, Dave, a magical period as a player and manager, some fantastic times with a wonderful football club. Like, when you look back over it, Dave, the standout moments, again, there's probably too many, but like, just with the players you played with as well, Dave, there was a phenomenal group of players that you played with at that time, wasn't there?
There was, and I think I was lucky enough to get into Cork in the '84 when they founded. God rest their souls, Jim Hennebury and Chris Hurley, who passed away only during the COVID. Were great men, came from Avondale, said they'd start up League of Ireland because it wasn't in the city, and people would find this hard to believe that there was no League of Ireland soccer team in Cork between probably '79 and '84. And they kind of went, but I must say in the early couple of years with Cork City, it was tough going. You know what I mean? We were always fighting against relegation, and it was something I was very proud of, that we were never relegated. And you know, you pick your, you know, it's the top four now in the Premier League. If you can't win it, you're going to get into the top four. We had our thing that we were never going to be relegated, even though most of our players would have been Munster Senior League players at that time, and just to keep the show on the road. And I absolutely loved turning out with City. I was turning out with the GAA as well, and it caused a bit of controversy over the year. But like, I'm a Cork man. I love playing both codes, and that's all I wanted to do was play ball, you know. So I think with City, definitely, you know, I think we won a League Cup in the '87, which was a big national trophy to win the League Cup. But I think definitely winning the league was a massive moment for all of us. To do it up in Dublin as well in the RDS, and to win 3-1. I was lucky enough to get one of the goals, and you know, it was just that, you know, as I said, you try to turn up in the big occasions for your club, and to bring a trophy back to Cork was tremendous. Bayern Munich was lucky. Galatasaray was even luckier. So you know, these things happen, and it's great to see, you know, Cork doing so well really in the national level in those days.
And how did you manage both, Dave? Like, as I said, it was a fairly a time where you had to really commit to sport, and you were probably at it 5-6 nights a week in terms of training and playing with the two different codes. So how did you manage it, Dave, in terms of going to the different? Was there a bit of balance had to be struck with both, or was there a preference on your part for one over the other?
I think I always wanted to win an All Ireland. I think that was you know, when you grew up in Cork, as I said, seeing Jimmy Barry scoring the 73 goal against Galway, you know, it was an iconic moment when he was only 19, and you know, to go on and play with him and then say, Can I go on and win an All Ireland medal with Cork was one of the big things. City at the time weren't putting big money into it. We were never going to win the league. We would be competitive, but you know, we were in cup finals and things like that, and we were competitive in that, you know, one-off games. But I think over a league, you need the best players, and I was lucky enough to get on the League of Ireland sides, and I travelled with a lot of those teams around Europe, the National League side, and I played with these players that I was coming up against then. And you know, there was 6 of them in all, like the Derry team that won the treble, you know, the Rovers team that did the 4 in a row. We come up against these players, and you know, there was 6 or 7 of them on those teams that were making the National League. So to win a league was extremely difficult. But look, I wanted to win an All Ireland with Cork. I did that, and lucky enough, and when I stepped aside, I was young enough to give my full allegiance to Cork City to try to win that elusive league medal, and I was lucky enough to do that.
And just the local stuff was obviously the bread and butter day, but when you came out of a hat to play against Bayern Munich, Galatasaray, some of those big huge games, did the build up to those games change, Dave, from what you would have done?
Well, I was working that morning. We played.
Bring us back, Dave, and tell us just about the day in question.
Look, I'm in the plumbing game. I have my own business, and you know, in those days, like, you have to bring in the bread. You know what I mean? Playing Bayern Munich, so sounds great, but we were on 100. We were not on 100 grand a week, like, so. You know, I played that morning. People are saying to me, I know somebody came around and said, "Why did you say you were saying?" That's the way it was. You know, I remember we used to go to Derry, and we go up on a Saturday, Claim on a Sunday, those days, get on a bus and we arrive back in Cork at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and then we're up at 8 o'clock then to go to work, so that was the way it was. I just, looking back at, the Pro League is the way to go, you know what I mean? If you have the finances to get players and to totally commit to soccer or totally commit to your sport, it's the way to go. Strength recovery is a big part. Like, you go up and you play an intense game, then you get on a bus for 7 hours, you come back, have a couple of hours sleep and go out onto a building line and start working. It's not ideal for the body, but I'd have to probably go training with the Cork senior footballers then, prepare for a National League game up in Roscommon then, so that's the way it was. It wasn't, looking back, I was kind of wondering, why did you do it? But, in your heart and heart, I didn't want to leave. I was real passionate about both codes, and I didn't want to leave anybody down. And I managed to pull it off. My body is probably cribbing now to say that I should have retired a lot before that. But, look, it's the way it was. But.
And what's your own opinion on League of Ireland now, Dave? Like, obviously, there's always been a financial kind of constraint associated with the league, and the FAI probably not maybe doing what they probably should do in terms of embracing it and bring it to another level. Will we ever get to a stage where, like, I've always looked at it in terms of the GAA model, where we might have a team representing every county in the country, and
look, the Premier League, we all look at the Premier League, and look, that's driven by Sky Sports, it's by media, by big money, billions. That unless this show goes into the $1 million bracket and can sponsor Cork City and give them about $500,000 a year, that's the way it is.
Give us 12 months.
The money is not there. The money is not there, and I've seen great people get involved with Cork City, put a lot of money in and try to bring it forward, and a lot of people have, but to sustain it is hard. And I think the way when Forrest took over, I was extremely proud. I was up at the game in 2010 where we won the first division to go back into with Graham Cummins' goal. I was there, and I met Cork City supporters coming back and the petrol stations on the way back to Cork, and it was fantastic. And when I saw Forrest taking over the supporters club, I was saying all the money will go in and the right way back into the squad. But I have to say, the way it was, the finances were massive, and the way it ran it ran ahead of itself. You know what I mean? It wasn't controlled in the last number of years after we won the double, and to put that kind of money, and we're still suffering. There's still debt there. And it's for me, for being there so long, to see that happening to the club is heartbreaking, really, because I was talking to Colin Healing today, and I went out there, and a bunch of young fellas running around, and they're under massive pressure because everybody wants to talk about the leagues and the cups that the City won. These boys now have to get us back on track and get us back into the Premier League, which is a big ask for them, especially these young boys who haven't the experience. But hopefully that'll happen.
Thanks very much for joining us on the Cork Sports News, Dave. Thank you.